Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, the federal government is exploring ways of putting the economy back on the path of growth and sustainable development. Now, this was amply demonstrated during the last Federal Executive Council meeting, where 10 billion naira financial support was given to states to navigate through the current turbulent economic waters. Now, other levels of intervention are rail expansion from Lagos to Maiduguri, fertilizer for farmers to upscale the 2024 crop season, and other investment-driven options. Now, these are some of the issues Tuesday Live will be discussing tonight. But first, let's get to see this report put together by State House correspondent Musbau Anwahab.
It's the 142nd meeting of the National Economic Council, and President Bola Tinubu opted to participate. Apparently, there were present issues to discuss with the leaders of the sub-national governments.
My presence here this afternoon.
These issues included the continued effort at ameliorating the social and economic hardship in town. The issues prolonged the meeting for over 4 hours of deliberation. Under the National Construction and Household Support Programs for all the geopolitical zones, President Bola Tinubu approved full counterpart financing for Port Harcourt-Maiduguri Railway to traverse rivers Abia, Enugu, Benue, Nasarawa, Plateau, Bauchi, Gombe, Yobe, and Borno states. The Ibadan-Abuja segment of the Lagos-Kano Standard Gauge Railway is to link Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Osun, Kwara, Niger, Abuja, Kaduna, and Kano states. The Sokoto-Badagry Road project is specially prioritized for its strategic importance to the agricultural sustainability of the nation. Other items under the National Construction and Household Support Program include one-off allocation to states and the Federal Capital Territory of 10 billion naira for the procurement of buses and CNG uplift program, delivery of 50,000 naira uplift grants each to 100,000 families per state for 3 months, provision for labor unions and civil society organizations, deployment of 155 billion naira for the purchase and sale of assorted foodstuff to be distributed across the nation. President Tinubu urged state governors to work together to meet the needs of citizens, promising the needed support to ensure that Nigerians are relieved of the hardship. Musbau Anwahab.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. 10 billion naira to the states. That was what came out of the last NEC meeting. That's the National Economic Council meeting, where 10 billion was given out to see how the states can use this to, as we said at the opening statements, to navigate through the rather turbulent economic waters. So that's putting that in real context. So 10 billion was following the meeting of the National Economic Council. But let me introduce our guests. Would like to welcome once again Senator Abubakar Kyari, is the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. Minister, it's always a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let me also welcome another very regular discussant on this program, Professor Ken Ife, a development economist. Prof,
thank
good
you.
to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And also another fairly regular contributor to our programs here, the National President of All Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, Architect Kabiru Ibrahim. Good to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also joining us tonight is another regular. Tonight it's a night of regular contributors and analysts. Engineer Kashim Ali, a former president of the Nigeria Society of Engineers. Also, he at one time also presided over the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, current president. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
All right, and as is usual, at some point in time, you watching this program can get to join in the discussion in the studio. But when it's that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedures. But let's start off by looking at those issues that we promised we would be examining tonight. And that's dealing with how the measures that are being introduced can put the economy back on sustainable growth. And that's the desire of all of Nigeria. But let me start with the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. Minister, the President, and indeed the government, has ruled out a number of measures to cushion the hardship that the country currently faces. And if you look at it all, it's totaling more than 1 trillion naira in intervention. Now, how will this improve the lot of Nigerians across the board?
Well, let me start by saying that when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in May 29, 2023, he took courageous and bold steps in trying to put the country on a straight footing. A situation where he found a very shaky economic situation. Those courageous steps, of course, cannot be effected without some hardships. And he has said time without number that just give me that patience, that tolerance, and we'll be on the straight on the straight path. And I think we're beginning to see some of the effects of what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the steps that he has taken. In the agricultural space, believe me, we have never seen investment opportunities and the enthusiasm that investors have exhibited, especially within the recent times, that we have seen people coming from even outside. Saudi Arabia has been here, and they're willing to partner with Nigeria in the agricultural space. So we have seen also steps taken by the government, especially look at, for instance, the CNG program. The CNG is aimed at reducing the cost of transportation because of one, the removal of subsidy, and two, because we still import the fuel and it's dollar-based, and because of the exchange rate fluctuation, the CNG uses 25% off cost of normal petrol. So these are giant steps and investments that the president has taken to alleviate the sufferings of the people.
Okay, we'll look at these measures you reeled out in greater detail, but particularly the question of food, which is the very basic. Everyone needs that. But let's come to the economist, Professor Ken Ife, as a watcher of the sea. How do you see this affecting a lot of Nigerians? A lot of people have said so many things, and how can this be tailored so it doesn't end up at a situation where some say you just don't throw money at a challenge and throw money and think it will solve the problem?
Well, I think one thing that strikes everybody is the latest statistics on GDP that showed agriculture underperforming at 0.18%, when the population growth rate is 2.8 to 3% and urbanization is 4.6%. So it raises huge concern. But on two levels, we have a Minister of Agriculture that is on top of this job, and he has resources, without a doubt. And I also have a very robust Minister of State. I've interacted with him on different programs. But what is more decisive is the fact that in this meeting he had with NEC, he has actually brought the subnationals to the center stage of this fight of insecurity, this state of emergency. And that is very remarkable. But yes, 10 billion to each state government, yeah. But we need to give more direction and support, because if you say 10 billion to them, make sure they are going to match it with their own 10 billion. So that's the beginning, to make sure that they commit. So the pot gets larger, and it acts as a counterpart of some sort. But 3 is to actually see how you engage private sector in this, because it's always good for state to come, but they are so close to the private sector. If I want to hear that AFAM is involved, and I want to hear that more PPPs are involved, and so all this effort about engaging private sector, because in the end of the day, when you talk about last mile, it's still the man who puts the thing on the ground. And also, I like the idea that there is a focus on doing more mechanization and supplying more seedlings, very good seedlings. So that's fine. But remember that from the north central down to south, southeast, south, their major crisis is of land. So how much land can you bring into cultivation? That's a land clearing, because that is over almost 1 million per hectare going down from them. It's a major consideration. So you find that, and from my experience from working with government on PPP, we went to pilot cassava bioethanol in the southeast. The moment the governor said he wants to do 100,000 hectares, the whole community donated 180,000 hectares. And many people, diaspora, are coming in to plug into the cassava program. But it's a PPP, and then we are now trying to see how government can, honor their own commitment. So the enthusiasm, as the minister, honorable minister said, is there. People are anxious from everywhere, all over the world. They want to engage because they have seen that the future is agriculture, and there's a determination and boots on the ground that actually want to transform this into reality. So the answer to your question is we're going to have to make sure it doesn't become another wishful thinking, another spending spree.
Thank you. And the AFAN president, I know your main concern is how the Nigerian farmers can get back to tilling the soil and can move their produce with no hindrance. And the circumstances have not been that favorable in some years now. Have we seen any change? These measures that have been put in place, how will they impact the provision of the growing and generally the provision of food as to ensure security?
Well, I want to congratulate the President for actualizing state the attainment of food security. Because I had always said, and I said it many times now, that the question of food security is actually resting squarely on subnational. I now have a situation where the President is incentivizing states to join hands to bring about food security. And then deliberate effort is being made also in transportation by all these investments, I see. Because when you look at the Sokoto, Badagry, superhighway, one call it traverses the food baskets, several food baskets of the economy. And once it comes up, we facilitate the movement of food from place of production to place of need. And that is very, very cardinal, very, very crucial to the food system. The food system also will grow because regardless of what parties the subnationals are, they are getting equal treatment from the president. And he's incentivizing them and he's telling them that whatever their problems are, they should come forward. From what I read in the press statement, come forward and talk of whatever they want, and he is there, ready to assist. So for the first time in this nation, we are seeing a collective effort by everyone concerned to address the issue. And as, of course, as you have said, the issue of food is very, very crucial. crucial to everybody. Everybody has to really work very hard to make sure that there is sufficient food in the nation. The food system is challenged as every other food system in the world is challenged. The global challenge is that we have to look at all the stakeholders and they have to work together. Government, the producers, private sector, even donor organizations, advisors, technical advisors and all that will have to work together in tandem to be able to really make the food system work. Nigeria's position is unique. Going across so many countries and attending food system conferences, I just attended one last week, shows me that Nigeria is really in a very difficult situation because we are indirectly feeding other nations around us. And that makes the job more difficult for us. And I think the effort to really include everybody to work in tandem with the central government is a very unique opportunity for Nigeria. Because hitherto, we only depended on councils of agriculture, the federal government or federal ministry of agriculture and food security will have its budget. And that is a very far cry from what will really transform the national economy or the national food system. But now every state is getting 10 billion. So they should all come forward to do it. Whatever it is that is a problem now is insecurity. And that insecurity will also get a very fair share of attention if the money is given to the state are utilized properly.
All right, we'll look at that. But let me come to Kashim Ali. And Nigeria also suffers from a huge infrastructure deficit. Yes, we've seen attempts and efforts in the way of rail development and in also roads, giving attention to roads as well. And there's still a lot that needs to be done. How do you see the various interventions impacting on the infrastructure that's critically needed in order to drive the economy and sustain it on the path of growth?
Thank you very much. Certainly, any effort at investing in the development of infrastructure is always welcome because there can never be enough of it. The problem, I was very excited hearing the president offer to give each state 10 billion. But if experience is a good teacher, throwing that money at the states may not yield the desired results. We have had several examples of when states were giving such funds. Like ecological fund, when there was flooding, 2012, 2022, we didn't see enough, not much was seen of what was done with the money. Because this experience we had in 2012 was what we had again in 2022. I wish, therefore, that the president should have taken this as a national program, since it is ad hoc in nature, to also create an ad hoc, a tax team to do a thorough study, develop strategies according to the needs of each state. Because what you require to make life meaningful in one state is not likely what you need to make life meaningful in another state. So, but now just throwing it at them, and they are not, perhaps some of them are not even ready. And there's no guideline on how this money will be utilized for purpose of monitoring. So I think it's a good thing. We need to build a lot of infrastructure. We need to do a rail system. We need to crisscross this country with more routes, because there are many places that can be reached within a short time, but we are reaching and taking long time to reach in Nigeria today. For instance, from here to Enugu can be as short as 2.5 hours or 3. But today we go round, and before we get. In fact, many places, there are so many shortcuts for which the roads have not been developed. So we need to do, there is no investment that is too much for infrastructure. But I'm worried about this current strategy. Giving the money to the states will not give us the desired result. There should be a tax scheme to implement it as a national program.
Well, it's interesting that some Nigerians, some citizens have also expressed such fears. Well, the question is, the sub-nationals were in attendance, and one would want to believe that they appreciate the enormity of the challenge at hand and the need for a consensus, a national approach with the sub-nationals playing the key role that they ought to play in driving this. Should we still think that the experience of the past would repeat itself this time around?
Let me differ a little bit, because from my point of view, from where I stand and where I operate, I have seen a lot of enthusiasm from state governors. We have seen, even at the ministry, visitation by almost 17 state governors who have come to seek for partnership between the federal government and the subnationals in terms of the, the agricultural support. What, in effect, Mr. President did on Thursday last week was to sit down with the state governments and say, listen, this thing, we're all together in this fight. And in fact, actually, he clearly told them that the land is with the states. So we have a food insecurity problem, and we should all join hands. And he commended a lot of them for standing up and doing the needful. I mean, I can count so many of them that have shown commitment in trying to, develop the agricultural space and the kind of investments that they have done in that regard. So I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of commitments from the states, and in their level of investments in trying to, bring up the agricultural production, because that's the problem we are facing now. Of course, like the president had mentioned earlier, is that because of the disparity in currencies and what have you, we find a lot of, just like any other good, whether it's cement or any other products, fuel, petrol, that finds its way across the border. So also food finds its way across the border. And it's all for market forces. So the production level is such that because of the sort of the problems that we face today, if you remember, just on the first year anniversary, I think the June 12th dinner, Mr. President had appealed to the bandits to allow people to have access to their farmlands. So there are issues that we need to address, because cultivated land has become in short supply because because of lack of access and for fear of the criminality that is going on around the farmlands. So that in itself has reduced production. Then, of course, climate change is also another big factor. As I'm talking to you, I believe in the home state of the president. Just this morning, there was a lot of cry for lack of rain, while here in Abuja, I mean, rain is unbelievably.
Not the rainmakers.
Well, reportedly, some have even gone spiritual too.
Yeah, to seek for rain. So that's the kind of system that we're looking at. From the onset, we had drawn from our ministry, myself and my colleague, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, we had done a roadmap to see how do we now increase production. And that's what we have been trying to do. We've been trying to do wet season, dry season, wet season, dry season, wet season, so that we could have cultivation all year round. Part of the plan and direction in which Mr. President had asked me to explain to the governors is the mechanization program that we have in place. I just came back from Belarus about 2 weeks ago, just before the summer break, and we went and saw the tractors that we had ordered, 2,000 of them, with 10 huge 150 horsepower combined harvesters that we expect from anywhere from 60 days from now to be delivered. That's only one quarter of the program that we have in place. So the second one is the John Deere, of course, that has been in the news for quite some time. And the third one is the one that was passed in the Federal Executive Council last week. It's called the Greener Hope. It's by indigenous company, Origin Tech Group. They seeks to establish 1,000 agro-service centers around the country to provide tractor hiring services, even extension services. So it's a whole one-stop shop agro service center, and it's going to, every local government would have one, and some big local governments would have more than one. So these are programs that we have in place. Of course, the GIP, also the Green Imperative program, which is funded by the Deutsche Bank with the backing of the Islamic Development Bank, which is also 950 million euros, will soon be in the pipeline. And then the other thing is about the harvesters, combined harvesters. We're trying to, as much as possible, to increase production, to reduce post-harvest losses. We have been doing very well in rice cultivation, and at the same time we're picking up in wheat. We have done the last wheat, and it was very commendable, and I believe we're going to double our production in the next wheat cycle. But at the same time, there's a clash between farmlands that cultivate wheat and rice. So it's for us to assist the farmer to harvest whatever it is quickly to make way for the other one. So harvesters, mechanization in itself is something that is very, very key. And I'm happy to say some states have already keyed in. Niger State has keyed in, of course, yet they have procured a lot of tractors, so also has Jigawa. And a lot of others have signed MOUs with other suppliers of agricultural equipment.
Well, Minister, if I might just stay on that a little longer. Yes, you could enumerate all these measures that are expected to impact the situation. But it still remains that for many citizens, the basic question they'd ask is, yes, you have these wonderful programs going on or coming up. However, how soon will this food become available in such a manner that the resources of the people would be enough to get them and to take care of other matters? Now, this is the same question I'll be putting later on to Professor Kedife, because this all borders on what you have, the state of the economy, the purchasing power, the availability of food. Yes, you'll have more production, you might have food in more abundance, but would the people be able to afford them?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. You've just mentioned it. Presently, it's not. Yes, there's an availability question, but it's more of the affordability issue that is having impacting on the population. And I quite sympathize with Nigerian people, and that's why we are relentless in trying to see how we could produce more. It's a question of supply and demand. And price stabilization is when you have more supply and the demand is, you have the supply and the demand curves, and then you have a market equilibrium price. But I must say also that there are a lot of issues that also impacts on the demand, on the supply, sorry. When you look at the question of hoarding, when sometimes I say hoarding, people look at it in that negative form that you build a big warehouse and you go and store and lock it up. People now use agricultural commodities as store of value. And I'm sure Mr. Ken will be able to mention that. So they store, even the housewives in the rural areas, they may store 5-6 bags of grains as a store of value, so that for a rainy day they can just pick out one and sell and then have money to do their transactions. So it's there, and these are issues that we have seen, and it's a cycle. It's a cyclical thing, and everybody understands how, especially those dealing with production and marketing of those products, they understand that there are lean seasons, and they understand that there are seasons of glut. And it's a cyclical thing. But the most unfortunate aspect of the whole thing is how inputs, whether they're imported or locally produced, are indexed to the dollar. Case in point, Mr. President had also mentioned the issue of fertilizer. Urea, for instance, is the major ingredient in NPK, about 35–38%. Our urea is 100% Nigerian. It's made from gas. But today, as I'm talking to you, urea is about anywhere between 30 to 33,000 naira, depending on the location, per bag. Now, if you're going to import urea from outside, it's less than that. It's about 10,000 cheaper. I had calls to invite Indorama, who's one of the biggest urea manufacturers in Nigeria. And I asked them, give us your cost structure. Let's see, why are you selling it at that price? Because you are giving gas, which is a local resource, and should be benefit to the local, to the citizens of this country. And you're being priced, even though you're being priced in dollar, but you're given an incentive, a discount, for you to sell.
Instead of 6.
To sell in the country. So it's not exactly like, you're being given dollar at the exchange rate. So at the end of the day, when you look at, there are several structures that we're looking at. So we have discussed, and we're going to bring out measures that would now significantly reduce the price of the input to fertilizer. Thereby, because I'll tell you, no matter how you intervene as a government, whether it's state government, local government, or federal government, we have, I don't know, Afan is here, maybe what's the population of farmers today? I look at it, it's about 25, 26 million, million farmers today. So even if you're going to give, like we have fertilizer now, the one that was donated to Federal Ministry of, that's currently in distribution, that was given by CBN, is 2,150,000 bags. Now if you're going to give every farmer just one bag, you're not even achieving 10% of the farmers in Nigeria. So how do you really look at it? Because we have a huge space, and so the best way is to design policies. Now, of course, I see people thinking and saying that government is to intervene. Government cannot produce, but to intervene, make policies that things will be cheaper for the common man.
All right. In addition to this discussion, we do have another report which will be taken right now. It's by Musa Baba Aliyu in Abuja here.
The heavens have opened again, the rains coming in torrents, and the Nigerian farmers are already back to doing what they know best. Rain-fed farming is most practiced in Nigeria. The farming activities consist of land clearing, preparation, and planting. The prediction this year is that the rains will come early and cease early. Farmers are advised to plant early maturing seeds, especially farmers in the northern parts of the country.
Try to see that the farmer maximizes the land size to get optimum plant population. So we encourage them here to plant one seed per stand, and then the planting spacing, the distance between each plant is being reduced from what they usually do from 75 centimeter between plants and now to 25 centimeter, which ensure the land is better maximized and utilized.
This farmer told me that their major challenge this year is high cost of inputs. The cost of fertilizer is a major challenge. A bag is above 50,000 naira, he says. Investigation reveals that exchange rate and cost of transportation were responsible for the scarcity and high cost of the inputs.
If you use the current exchange rate of maybe 1,500, supposed to buy down to 2,500. But unfortunately, they are selling it. I bought fertilizer for 36,000. And we know that in February, it went for 2,000. In April, it was 8,000 plus. So instead of the price coming down, when the dollar is coming down, we had expected the price of fertilizer to be also coming down.
In the immediate, government has that executive power to actually break the monopoly power of those people that are controlling and distributing this fertilizer. So if that is done, fertilizer will be readily available at affordable prices by the masses, because if you look at the bulk of these farmers, especially in villages, are poor. Some of them can barely afford to get maybe just a tier of fertilizer. Talk less of getting a bag which is going for almost about 40-something or 30-something thousand.
However, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has received donation of 200 million bags of fertilizer worth 10 billion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria. The ministry has already commenced the distribution of the input to states to cushion the effects of high cost of fertilizer.
What we're trying to do is we try to Mr. President has assiduously trying to curb insecurity in those promising areas, and at the same time increase production in agriculture. But what we need to do, research in good seed, shorten cultivation period, drought-resistant crops, heat-resistant crops, and also do all year-round farming. This is something that we're looking into.
In the area of seed supply, the Agricultural Seed Council of Nigeria is ensuring that farmers have access to high-quality seeds this year.
National Seed Council, the Agricultural Research Council, and the Research Institute were challenging them because the national seed system of every country has a structure and a framework. So right now, for the first time after so many years of abandonment, we are reviving the national seed framework. We've challenged them to have meeting, because what normally happens is you need to know, for example, what is the demand for maize, for rice, for sorghum, for cowpea, for this and that.
With this deliberate agricultural policy, the hope of bumper harvest is renewed. There is the belief and optimism that more food will be produced at the end of the season. Musa Baba Aliyu.
All right, back here in the studio, and this one we put into Professor Ken Ife, and you hear this all the time, that Nigeria's situation defies virtually all economic theories. Now, if we're talking about supply and demand here and what drives them, you find that in the case of Nigeria, on so many occasions, it is seen as not conforming.
Not correct.
Yes. So the big question here is, yes, all these measures are going in and they're expected to yield results, but the people are still saying this is taken away by inflation.
That they are left behind.
Right.
That's what they're saying. See, Nigeria is experiencing stagflation. Now, every central bank in the world knows how to deal with inflation, but only a few of them understand what stagflation is. And Nigeria is the classic case. And there are many features in this that are alien to foreign countries. They don't know what impact insecurity has. They don't know what impact high transportation costs, high diesel costs, 250% increase in power, all of this, and then they don't know. They don't experience it, so they still think go and raise interest, go and do that. It's a different story here. But let me tell you just how complex it is. Inflation, whatever we say here, if you look at the 5 components of inflation, food basket sub-index is cruising at over 40%. The distance of 5 to 7% over the CPI, that is the composite price index, for years. So everything we do doesn't even touch it there. It keeps on hovering there at high altitude. And it boils down to, why are you buying tomatoes? Small basket, 20,000 naira, the other pepper, 15,000. There's so many underlying issues in this food inflation as it connects. And the good thing is that the president has actually come to 3 things that are at the base of it, which is agriculture, processing, what you call value addition or manufacturing value addition, and then infrastructure, the infrastructure side of it, especially transportation. He's got those 3. But the interplay of these 3, how they affect what is going on the food, is what we need to unpack. Now, I find it difficult to convince people that 100 million Francophone citizens surrounding Nigeria are actually eating from the same pot with us. And the reason they are eating is not just because of the adverse weather conditions around northern Cameroon, Chad, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Benin. It's not just adverse conditions. There's a currency devaluation that has made it extremely profitable for them to buy whatever you produce. Because 8 years ago, 1 naira will buy 3 francs CFA. Today, 1 naira can only buy 0.7. So they see Nigerian naira, the big boy, is 80% devalued. So everything coming from you is cheap. They don't need to go to farm anymore. They got to buy your food. And they already have big protection from ECOWAS Treaty on free movement of foods and free movement of people, goods, services, right of establishment. But they don't have protection on the second level. When you add value, you have to come to ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, where value addition, you have to prove that you meet the rule of origin. And then we can charge tax, we can do all our duties. Do you understand? So what that means is that quite alien to Nigerian economy is the fact that they have demand pool inflation, cross-border demand pool inflation, which you cannot control. Our central bank cannot control that. Their CFA is overvalued because France linked it to euro and bonds 80% of their reserves to keep that high value. So for 10 years, it still remain constant. Whereas we can't afford that pleasure. You can't go and bond our 36 billion because you want to change. We can't do that. So there's that artificial link. And that means that, you know what it means in effect is this. If we decide to double the price of our grain at the frontier state, Nigerians cannot afford our food anymore because you can't afford the cost of transporting it down. And that means the cost has tripled. And then the distance traveled, instead of 1 day to travel from Katsina to Lagos, is now 3 days, a bad road. So it's triply difficult for them. It's a very, very tight business for us. But for you to deal with that, you have to have a value addition at world level in those frontier states. If you say you can do it on your own, you are going to be fighting those who are funding those farmers. So you have to use marketing board to buy up and then give to local processor to process. If you import paddy, you give to local processor to process so that you can keep the jobs. So we have to think carefully how we deal with that without becoming a pariah state within ECOWAS, scattered.
Well,
it's very complex.
It's interesting you put it this way because you've raised a question about why, particularly food, the price of food keeps going up. And
the hoarding, he said, is also important.
Right.
Because the same way that they hoard the dollar as a store of value, knowing that it is going to bet is that it must go down. So they're holding it because they know inevitably they will earn money. The people holding the goods know that prices are going up, and also they will hold the good because it's a store of value. So they will sell it tomorrow and earn interest. So it is the same principle.
So let's come to the Afan president. Perhaps he might be able to give us an insight into this. I get asked this question often. It might sound simple, but again, it's been thrown up here. Let's use the tomatoes as an example. Why would just a small basket of tomatoes cost 20, 30,000 naira? What is the dollar input in that? Perhaps the Afan president can help us out.
You see, the discussion now is becoming more pronounced from May till now, and it will, the price of potato will even be more up to September, October. The Prof is hitting the nail on the head. You see, we have always had scarcity during this period. If you check over the years,
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's never been like this.
Wait a minute. The purchasing power of the naira is a very large factor in this, because what anybody will produce tomato with today, there are many components which you are not even talking about, which probably because you don't know. We do not have vegetable seed manufactured in Nigeria or produced in Nigeria. Most of it is imported. Check. This, our seed system is that we buy this in dollars, and then we also buy pesticides and all that in dollar. And then during this period, because of the level of water, we cannot plant some of these vegetables except we do it in greenhouses. And the greenhouse issue is just catching up. So this is work in progress. Maybe as time goes on, we will be able to do climate smart agriculture and produce these things even during the rainy season properly. Because and then the barometers we are using are the barometers of the cities. The price of tomato in Abuja is not a good barometer. If you go to Lagos, it's not a good barometer. But if you go to my village, for instance, it is fairly affordable. Because the factors of transportation and all that will not be there as well. But so the whole issue is...
well, if you extend it to, for instance, if we accept the argument about seeds and all those that you talked about, how about a crop like yams?
Well, I want to tell you that the real issue is really the purchasing power of the naira.
Okay, all right. Yes, Minister.
Yes, I just want to chip in here and say that apart from the prices of inputs, like he rightly mentioned, the cycle has always been there, where you have lean seasons and seasons where you have availability in the market. But production generally this year has gone down. Generally, and for obvious factors that we have mentioned before. So in any case, prices in January are 10 times lower than prices in June. Always, all year. That's always, yes. So, but this time around, the difference between January and June, the June has, had almost tripled. And partly it's because of lack of production. We have sought everywhere we looked because we thought there was pest infliction and things like that. Really, it's not much. But what we have seen is that there's less cultivation of tomato than before. And population is growing. And then we try to find out why are people not cultivating tomato. They're going for more cash crops now.
All right. So again, it goes back to the question of improving the economy, and even where those who produce these foodstuff, where they do in large quantities, it pays them more to sell to people who take them across the borders. That's another issue that's been...
That's true. But also, I'm sure ministers are aware of this. You know, when we buy palliatives in the same economy, then there's competition. I'm not saying you should import, but you know.
No. You're right. I had
because you are there with big money buying them up to go and distribute. You are helping hike the price.
Prof, I agree with you. And that was why I stopped World Food Program from buying from the market. And I said, if you want palliatives, assist the farmer to grow and you offtake from the farmer, that's all.
Absolutely.
And that's what they've been doing.
Absolutely.
Well, Engineer Kashimali, obviously the question of infrastructure comes back into play. Yes, insecurity in the land has made sure that less farmers go to their farms. More people are abandoning the farms for fear of their lives, even as the insecurity in the land has been tackled from various fronts. But it does follow that where something is produced, moving around is also a challenge. And the various means by which we can get food from the farm to the table are such that there are many things involved here at many levels. And a lot of them deal with the provision of basic infrastructure. So again, part of the measures the government is taking is to improve infrastructure in the country. And we've seen that as demonstrated in pumping in more resources to develop the railway system. Yes, for those who were around during the period I call the golden era, when the rail system worked in this country, a lot of the food items were moved around by rail. I'm sure Engineer Kashimali, you'd remember that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. In my first intervention, I think I wasn't explicit enough. I want to reiterate on why the president should not give the money. Let me start from there, to the subnationals. And I use experience as a teacher. Before 1983, federal rules were maintained by the states. The federal government will give money to the states, and the state government, or Ministry of Works, the additional engineers will handle the federal roads within their territory. And that's how they kept the roads working. At the heat of the politics of the early 80s, especially 83, some states stopped using federal money for federal roads. They're using them for their own state roads and insulting the federal government of not taking good care of their own roads within their states. That is why at the Council of Works in 1983, they changed the policy of giving money to states. And federal government started directly managing the roads across the country. And that was the beginning of our problem on the roads. At a point in this country, there was a reform, they call it Paris Club reform they gave to state government. I recall going on a visit to one state for a study store, and they said they used their own money to renovate the palaces of traditional rulers. Then, quite recently, there was intervention also. State government that had difficulty paying salaries were giving loans. How many of them use the money to pay salaries? So we have a lot of examples. But we have a case where at a point also in this country, there was a need to look at the infrastructure, and the PTF was set up, and a lot was achieved. Up to today, there are some hospitals you go, in the rural areas especially, we see the bedsheets they're using are still PTF bedsheets. You see some universities and other schools that are still using buses provided by PTF. there are still legacies of PTF all around. It was a success with little money. So we're talking about almost about 370 billion naira. If it's given to the states from history, we won't get resolved. But if we sit down to do it as a national program and use Nigerians, experts in engineering, in agriculture, to sit down and develop programs, then we can achieve more. Because even this case of taking goods, products from the farms to the markets, often there are many roads. There are many ways of transporting some of these things. But it takes studies to know which is the best and easiest ways to do it. But if it's just by fiat, because the minister can stay in Abuja with the best of intention and then give money, let's look at River Rhine State. And they could say they want to do a road. In fact, the money you give, the entire money will not do even the road, let alone helping them on the farm. But with a national program, you could now focus on what exactly is doable. So at least there's something to show for the money. The money doesn't even need to be uniform. Some could have more than the others, depending on the peculiarity. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a national economy. National economy is not, it's aggregation of all that is in the states and the local one, even within individuals. So we look at it in that manner, then we can achieve. Because today, even in Abuja, people used to, buying yam in Abuja now is a problem. People used to come from states to come and buy yam in Abuja. You want to drive from here to the airport, you see so many places, you say, well, do you see them any longer? You go to all the markets in Abuja now, the yams there are as expensive as they are in Kano. So there's something we would not really understand yet. We need to have a study, a clear study of what is the situation. And there are many things we can get in Nigeria. Even these tractors we are talking about. In the southwest, there's a company that is producing tractors. During the PTF, I recall that there are not many people making pipes, pressure pipes in Nigeria. But they were encouraged to say, okay, you make the pipe. We need this quantity of pipes per annum, or per month even. If you can produce them in country, we'll buy them from you. And they came and upgraded their factories and started making pipes. Up to today, those pipe factories are there. That is why today nobody is buying pipes from outside, except the bigger size of pipe, like steel pipes that will still go abroad to buy. But today, you don't buy those pipes, smaller size of pipes outside the country. So we could use that to stimulate production, even manufacture of farm implements, because there are many, the technology has advanced. Even irrigation programs now, there are technologies for determining what quantity of, determining what seed will be suitable for a particular soil, what quantity of water it requires. And a lot of research has been going on. We had our Nigerian Academy of Engineering program research, and there were researchers who came with some of these products. They are there already in country, working, and people are even already trying to take them the patent from here to go and develop abroad. So if there's a national program, then you are able to touch all ends and bring them together and find solutions internally, because that is more sustainable than if we now have to look for people helping us, especially with farm implements, especially those who can do in country. So I still believe that good as this program is, there has to be this program. Problem we have now took time to build up. They will take time to clear them. Let's not be in a hurry to dash the money to this to the subnational. Let's sit down first and have a clear study. It doesn't take too much time. Let experts sit down and develop specific programs. What programs is suitable for what part of the country? Then we can implement them. That way we can get value for money.
All right. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there'll be more on the National Economic Council on the economy. And hopefully at that time, we'll open the phone lines and you can join in the conversation in the studio. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Well, this is the time we open the phone lines, and that means you can join in the conversation in the studio. The numbers to call will be on your screen, so I encourage you to take advantage of them and call in. And also remember the rules we put out every Tuesday. Sometimes you think we've said it so many times and we don't need to repeat them. But I tell you from experience, we still need to remind you, if you're calling in tonight and your call gets through to the studio, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also like to encourage you to go straight to the point so others can get on the platform. And this particular one I'm about to say is what happens all the time. Don't worry too much about the greetings. Just a simple hello. I mean, there's no need to go as far as wanting to know how those in the studio are faring or not. That's not the issue. Let's go straight to the point, and do keep those calls coming in. Whatever issues you raise, our guests would be willing to address them. So here we go in this segment. Well, a lot has been said about other measures that have been taken, the ones that would involve the purchase of foodstuff and distribution of foodstuff to families. And again, questions definitely would be raised about the mode of distribution and how the families who would be beneficiaries would get to be selected. And although sometimes when these measures are enunciated, you wonder just how far the government itself is willing to go. If we recall the experience of some years back, a couple of years back, when palliatives were being distributed, that some people would stand out in the middle of a queue and say, look, this is all I've got for my ward, just a few cups of rice and all that. And again, ensuring that these palliatives gets to the right people who actually need them.
Yeah, I quite agree with that. What we did, the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Food Security is the custodian of the food reserve. And when Mr. President directed us to release the 42,000 metric tons of assorted grains, we handed over to NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, in collaboration with the Office of the National Security Advisor. And the three of us sat down and drew up a template. And we had 18 different structures of categories of people that will be responsible for distribution to the vulnerable population for every state, in fact, for every local government. NEMA has the matrix for locations of vulnerable people and who are the vulnerable people. And in addition, also, Mr. President had directed that 20% of all distributions should be channeled through religious groups. So be it Islamic or Christian groups, it has to be channeled through them, because the essence of transparency and also for accountability. So the 18 different stages includes also civil society, media, security agencies, EFCC, ICPC, local government chairmen, traditional institutions, SEMA, which is State Emergency Management Authority. So there are 18 of them. So we had our state coordinators participate at that level. But at the national level, the federal ministry only handed over the consignment for distribution by NEMA. Even transportation was carried out in collaboration with the states and NEMA and the Office of National Security Advisor. So I believe that it was done because we have not had any concerns raised on the distribution of the 42,000.
Right. Okay, we have our first caller on the line tonight, Abdulaziz calling in from Kano. Hello.
Hello, good day.
Yes, good evening. Go ahead.
I just want to chip in my contribution. This issue of palliatives. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Abdulaziz.
This issue of palliatives will not help matters at all. Because many times palliatives is being distributed. How many percent of Nigerians got it? So, and secondly, want the government to know, government alone cannot handle this. Let stakeholders come in, especially in the case of the northern Nigeria, where we have a very vast land for agriculture, but we are still complaining of hunger all the time. I think if the government will do the needful, the right thing at the right time, the stakeholders should be involved.
Okay.
We have the richest people in Africa, in West Africa, but their people are dying of hunger, whereby we have a very large farm, a land.
All right. Thank you, Abdulaziz. And unfortunately, your line isn't very clear, but I think you were able to put across your thoughts. To say that government alone can't do it, and it would have been interesting to hear, your recommendation and who else should be involved, all stakeholders, all citizens, like you do here these days, that everyone should find a way to grow something somewhere, even if it's in their backyard, to ease the challenge. But again, as Professor Ken Ife said earlier on, that Nigeria is indirectly feeding most of its neighbors, and that citizens of other surrounding countries find it a lot easier these days to come in and purchase the grain. Now, how can this be addressed? Because if I were a farmer and I produced and I find out that there is a ready market, to me what's important is for me to be able to make my money apart from what sustains my family. And if anyone is coming in right to my farm to purchase, chances are I just sell off. And patriotism won't hold any water here, would it?
This was what informed our national program on cassava bioethanol value chain, where it was a partnership with government, 40% and 6% from the private sector. So the issue is we supply the input, which is about 50% of the economies of production. And the farmer or the private sector or state government, they do the land clearing, they do the mechanization and the labor. They will provide all input, they will off-take everything produced. So there's no way you can enter into that chain. We take off everything. Then all the processors on the chain will supply them the produce, and we still off-take whatever they process, whether it's flour or gari or anything. So in that way, we're not allowing those attitudes to come in, or those. So we are controlling that so that we can have a value chain approach, complete end-to-end intervention from seed multiplication. We work with IITA, RCN, Umudike on seed multiplication, and we'll supply all of, and the universities, 60 universities, they do 2028 of seed multiplication so that they can reach their local community. So that is it. You control the value chain and make sure that you can remove that post-harvest loss, which is 40% on cassava. Then we have zero waste because all the 20% cassava peel is going to be captured for animal feed, and for feed, and all of that. Tight chain. And then in that way, the farmers get rich. Okay. If you look at the whole country where they are doing their cassava, it's designed to punish the farmer and make no profit because they produce it and hope to transport it somewhere, and they get poorer. They meet them at their point of need with the resources and the varieties. Okay. Then you will see productivity.
All right. We have another caller from Abuja this time, Baku calling in. Hello.
We have another caller. Michael.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Siristoba.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Siristoba. I want to speak directly to the man on the maroon clothes.
Right, go ahead.
I want to seriously appreciate his contribution because he's a true Nigerian.
Which one is maroon?
And I want to speak to our honorable minister to be very specific in whatever he's saying, because Nigerians are listening and Nigerians are really counting every word that comes out of his mouth.
All right, Baku, are you done? Just that, or you have some suggestions on how the economic crunch can be tackled? Hello? All right, that's done there. So, Afan, the farmers are happy when they have the off-takers. And so the question would be, what would it take, excuse my play on the words, what would it take for the farmer not to succumb to people coming in from across the borders, particularly those that are around the borders, where there are reports of people selling willingly to those who are bringing in huge sums in their eyes because of what we've seen as the devaluation, the loss of value of Naira. People are coming in from across the borders and they're able to just pay up and take the produce away.
Well, you see, the situation is like this. Let us understand that since we agreed to AFTA, that is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we have made Africa one market. So people can come into any country and buy anything. And it's unfortunate that our Naira has very high dwindling fortunes. So people tend to buy easily what we produce, much faster than our own people, because the issue of affordability is what really takes away.
So who's at a disadvantage here? Because your citizens cannot do the same across the borders.
Well, what it is that if you go down to, let me give you a practical example. Here in Abuja, the costliest restaurant sells 500 grams of steak at about 50,000. If you go to Kenya, for instance, the same 500 grams will sell for $120 thereabout. So if anybody is telling you that there is inflation here, it's because they have not seen other places. But that is just, so that you appreciate that this problem is not only our own, Nigeria's problem. But the fact is this, people will always sell, or farmers generally sell at the farm gate or at the market nearest to them. Now, if anybody comes to the market nearest to them with the bag of money and buys from the market, and because his own currency has got higher purchasing power than our own, certainly people will sell to those people, no doubt about it. And that is a factor also. It's a factor, in our food system. We must factor it. Above that, we should have the country in mind at all times, and we have always implored our farmers. Unfortunately, if I even say it on TV, I might not be very popular with the farmers. There are farmers who sell what they produce even before it is harvested. Unfortunately. But you see, there is no single farmer that farms or produces everything that he or she wants. So somehow, invariably, you have to sell what you have to buy what you might need in other places. So this is the catch-22.
Okay, let's take this call from Ondo. Badmus is calling in. Hello, Badmus, go ahead. Badmus from Ondo.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Badmus.
Yes, thank you. Please, I want to be specific. Yes, I want to be specific concerning the intervention that the federal government is dishing out.
Yes, go ahead.
Ondo State is an agrarian community, we know. But most of the roads here are not motorable.
Badmus, just go ahead. You have these long
The rural
pauses.
areas are abandoned. The produce cannot get to the market. The inputs cannot get to the farm.
All right. Well, that's it. That's your point you're making. Badmus, we might have to cut off because you have these long pauses in between. And sometimes we think you're done and you start all over again. But I believe that you're done here with your contribution. Okay? We assume so. Well, unfortunately, the specifics he is asking about, he himself wasn't very specific about what's missing in Ondo, apart from generally saying that the road network is pretty poor in Ondo, and therefore produce cannot be moved easily from the farms. Right. Okay.
But I agree, Sokoto Road is actually trying to correct. And I must say, I quite commend that particular project in addition to the rail. See, rail is the cheapest and most effective means of transporting heavy goods along long distances. That is the most efficient. Nothing else rail is. I worked on the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri corridor in 2016, 2017. It was ready for contracting, but we couldn't come up with the 15%. And when I was working on it, I looked at the economics, I projected by 2030, the Eastern Coastal Corridor would be $1 trillion in revenue in GDP. And I carried out the same calculation on the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road to show that by 2030, that could also generate a $1 trillion economy, that high. In fact, when I looked at the financial model, that 18 trillion they are going to spend in 8 years, they will almost recover it in 10 years, if only they will be opening, as they do, open up. Because I worked on the numbers that you could use. 500,000 traffic at $10,000 naira will generate that money. So there is a wisdom in what is being offered. Secondly, There are 4 inflation corridors in Nigeria. There's the Lakaji corridor, which is Lagos, Ibadan, Kaduna, Abuja to Kano, is a high inflation corridor.
To GBR.
Very, very Jimbiya corridor. That is a very high inflation corridor. Look at all inflation. So you must try and connect the road from Badagry to Sokoto. You must try and connect it so that the flow of food, it doesn't have to be only vertical up and down. Connect, do interconnection so that you can have a flow of that food to the corridor, because that's where you have the highest inflation. In the coastal, you have medium inflation. In the east, you have low inflation driven by Benue, and that you can see low inflation. But you need this rail. You need this rail for it to work. You know, and of course, at the frontiers, you also have a low inflation at the frontiers. Of course, driven by the demand from the neighbors.
Let me just also add in the Lagos, the Badagry Calabar Expressway would traverse about over 40 dams, irrigation dams, over 40.
Yes, almost 20 in Oyo State.
No, about 40, yeah. But by the time you go
State,
to Kwara, Niger, Kebbi State, and Sokoto on that axis, you're going to expose and open up the whole agricultural space. There are over 600 agricultural communities along that corridor. And I've been to a tomato farm in Kebbi State, in Gaski, which there's the largest tomato factory is situated by GB Foods. And like you just rightly pointed out, that from that place to Lagos cannot be more than 400-500 kilometers, or maybe 500 kilometers. And ordinarily that should take you 6 hours, 7 hours drive. You know, even going at the average speed of 100 kilometers per hour, you should be able to be there in 5 hours, 6 hours. But it takes you 4 days, 5 days. Oops. So you could see if you're taking vegetables and you know, items that are perishable. So the conditions that they will get to Lagos, which is where the factories are that make tomato purees and where the market is. So in most cases, what we also see in Nigeria here is that where production takes place is not necessarily where it is consumed.
That's true.
Right, let's back to the phones now. We have a Folabi calling in from Kwara. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. My recommendations are 3 in number. 1, concerning the 10 billion naira given to the governor of state, I see it as a wasting of resources. Because in 2012, like one of the guests has spoken, on ecological funding, there was no result. 2022, no result. I wonder why the president again will give the governors another 10 billion naira. Now, going straight to the recommendation, it would have been very good, like they did in 1979 by Shagari regime. Every local government in Nigeria, they clear land. The major or the most expensive aspect of farming is land clearing. So, Honorable Minister, take note of this, sir. If you want agriculture to flourish in Nigeria, the idea of giving this governor 30 billion naira is a wasting of resources. Channel it through the local governments, now that they're having autonomy. And like they said, it should be a national program. It's not only you give out the money. Federal government can provide bulldozer. Ask for farm center in every local government in Nigeria. Like Mr. mentioned some things now, that a private company is bringing an agricultural service center in every local government. Before you bring agricultural service center in every local government, there is no enough land readily made available for farming. Some of these governors are serious, some are not serious. It's no longer in news. Now, the minister should please recommend for the president. Like, let us have farm center in every local government in Nigeria. Shagari regime did that. They clear land. After clearing land, they allocate the land for the farmers. Even next to a company in Nigeria here, when they have a problem concerning their raw materials, they cleared land, about 2,000 hectares at that time. They discovered that they cannot do farming alone. They now allocated the land for the farmers. and thereafter we have cluster farmers joining them. If you clear, let's say for instance, now you clear 5,000 hectares every local government in Nigeria, 774 local governments, you can see how the young graduates will come in and do agricultural activities. Shagari regime clear the land. They provide tractorization under the Nigerian River Basin. My father was a beneficiary at that time. They give us insecticide. They even give us the hybrid maize that were being used after planting it. They now allocated maybe 1 hectare according to your capacity, 2 hectares to the farmers. It is better that way. By clearing land, the most expensive aspect of farming is land clearing. How many graduates can go and hire bulldozer with the amount of bulldozer? In my hometown, when we did land clearance at that time, 5 years ago, it was a lot of money. Talk less of present this thing. Income is in Kwara here. Go there that you want to rent a bulldozer. You can see the cost. So first recommendation, the federal government should please clear land to have a farm center in every local government in Nigeria. First recommendation. Minister, take note of that, please. Now, after making sure you clear land, you can now allocate the land to graduates, people who are interested in the farming. That will go a long way than distributing 10 billion naira for governors. And the second aspect of it now, the insecurity. Cluster farming, note it, sir, the minister, is the best practice in the world now. Cluster farming, whereby we have many farmers at the same spot. It is even easier to monitor and secure those farms if we have about maybe 1,000 hectares in our local government, where we have 100 or 1,000 farmers. Let's say we give 1 hectare per 1 farmer. You imagine the number of people that will work in that area. It will be easier for the government to monitor such a cluster farming, whereby those farmers, those commercial farmers, like people like us, those commercial farmers, if they are in the same place, they can even contribute money to secure the farm. The federal government can even liaise with the civil defense or the necessary security agency to complement the farmer, to monitor this farm if it's been centralized. Now, that is the second recommendation. Now, the next one, on the issue of fertilizer, remember, a minister in Nigeria, Adeshina Akinwumi, he was able to solve the problem of racketeering fertilizer, whereby people that are not farmers, they will collect fertilizer and sell it. He was able to correct it. That was a good example. Now, federal government give 2 million fertilizer, where we have 25 million farmers. It couldn't go a long way. The government should invest more in that area rather than giving governors free 10 billion naira. Now, the next aspect, the value chain. Now, like the man from the eastern part has mentioned on cassava. Now, we have seen the minister activities in the area of wheat and rice, but in the area of corn or maize, not much has been done in that area. Even though normal subsistence farmers are doing that on their own. Now, the perishable of the thing. Can we have storage facility in every local government in Nigeria to store agricultural products? Second recommendation, sir, for the third one. Well, such that in every local government.
I think that should be 5 now. We have had second up to 3 times. We should be on your 5th recommendation now. Okay, all right. Well, I had so many recommendations there.
I believe some of them are apt and are quite helpful. Probably, I probably did not expatiate on those 1,000 service centers that I spoke about. And I also mentioned that some local governments that are big will have 2. And those service centers, like I said, apart from the tractorization, there will also be aggregation, storage, and issues of extension services, for instance. And in the issue of even the land clearing issue, just for information, NALDA, the National Agricultural Land Development Agency, just last week has been transferred back to Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, and all for emphasis of development of agricultural land to go with the mechanization programs that Mr. President has. So these are issues that those suggestions were good, and then these are when we come to where we're going to expand on some of our programs. We will have those things involved in those things. The issue of
wallet.
They
talked about the wallet.
Yes,
but
we did. Actually, that's what we did in the wheat. Yes, and then we have a similar program that we have using the Agro Pocket, the NAGS program. So it's working. It has its own challenges as well. It's not a foolproof system, but it's at least a lot better than what we see. But let me say something also, something that I have been able to observe, that whenever there is subsidy for anything, people always find a loophole to racketeer and profit on it. So these are things that we will look at and see develop areas where we can't have a completely foolproof system.
It would be good for you to ask the governors to put at least 20% of that 10 billion in land clearing. Because that's an investment. It's a long-term investment.
Yes.
Right. Another caller on the line?
Niger State is doing that.
Oh, yeah, I've been to Niger last week. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yes, Engineer Kashimali, you were about to chip in there.
Yeah, you see, the truth is, I like what Afolabi said about what Shagari did. You know, that time, it was people like me and maybe my brothers here. We came from fairly poorer background. The people who are targeted now, the millennial and Gen Zs, they have no patience for things that are a bit manual. They don't have patience for that because most of them were born in the urban areas and they have gone on holidays abroad and seen what farms really look like. So whatever we are doing will be something that will suit them. And that's why I talk about technology. And a lot of work has been done. I talked about what we just this week we came back from Apex program where we have innovation stores and who came into this meeting. Before then, there have been others. If you go like that, there is an Aseni office in Lafia. They are doing all sorts of things. They are going on. Let's leverage on all those and look for internal solutions to our problem. Even if you look back in also, I like history a bit. Even the railway system we had in the good old days, if you look at how they were developed, they didn't just come and develop them by just starting from one end and ending at the other end. At a point, they used people, localities, traditional rulers were used to contribute able-bodied men to come and help with physical, using their physical strength to lay the tracks in those days. They helped them to do that. It's still possible to do those things today by using technology. Like if you have a national management consultant to deal with all these issues, you have consultants at the level of states. And they can coordinate all these activities we're talking about. But let there be a study. We're talking about the coastal road. We're talking about Badagry, Lagos. These roads didn't come in this century. They were developed in the 70s. They were designed in the 70s. I recall way back in the 80s, I saw the alignment when they started initial work in 1980-something. I was serving in Nilaru. I used to come to Lagos every day. Around Papaland today, the corridor passed through there. This Badagry Sokoto Road. So it's not a new thing. But people took time to do their study. Let's not rush into anything. These problems were not created today. We can't solve them immediately. Let's study them also, find new solutions and implement them. But I can assure you that we can have all the solutions in this country. I have been, not too long ago, involved in a project in Nigeria. We're doing the rail project in Abuja. Okay. At a point, because it took a lot of time, the project was abandoned for a long time, I wanted to revive it. I had to say it was a team of young engineers from the FCDA that I put in the library. We worked for about 3 weeks, and we trekked for 45.5 kilometers.
Wow.
Trekked. and measured. That's how we came up with what is now called the Abuja Metro, was done by Nigerian engineers in FCDA, not the initial one that was done. The initial was not feasible. We didn't even have money to do it. So that's how we scoped it to what it is, and we delivered it. So there's so much we can do. We have a lot of say in the country. If we sit down, engage experts in Nigeria to sit down and develop someone, we will get better results at cheaper rate.
Okay, let's get back to the phones. And Abraham, I believe, is calling in from Kogi. Do we have Abraham? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, my Honorable Minister of Agriculture, I want to ask you a question. Do you know what is going on in this country, that most of the arable lands in this country are used for cash crops instead of food crops? And secondly, on the issue of Naira devaluation, how come, what concerns the Naira and the dollar, what is the relationship between two of them? They are two different currencies. Why can they, if they...
Okay. Abraham from Kogi, I think the line's gone off. And, well, two questions I believe he was able to put across. He says most of the arable lands used for cash crops, not food crops. Okay, we will note that down. Let's take the call from Yunusa, right?
Balance for the farmer, because they do
Yunusa from Abuja.
and they do
Are you there?
They do all kinds of rotation crops.
Hello.
It's a matter of which one gives them more.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think I just want to ask the Honourable Minister of Agri. What is I have a problem with the timing of sharing of fertilizer. Why is it that fertilizer are not shared by maybe, let's say, from February to maybe April, so that farmers can have the fertilizer at their hand? And what is the wisdom at giving the state governors the fertilizer to share instead of maybe as the other experts has been suggesting that the federal government should form a team to share it? And then the third issue is about the issue of our reserve. I think serious countries, maybe let me say developed countries, or maybe let's say the countries that we are looking forward to, that are already developed, they take food security as a major issue. Why are we allowing our grains to be, taken out? Like, for example, most of our grains is being taken away up to, let's say, Mali, Burkina Faso, and other countries, not just our neighbors. So it's a serious issue. We don't need to allow our food going outside because it's a matter of national security. It's a very important issue, and then I find it very, worrisome for a country like Nigeria allowing her food going outside. Just maybe, let's say, playing the big brother of Africa, that we want to be praised as the giant of Africa.
Okay.
Let's maintain our food security, and then maybe, have our own food here. And then when we are okay with it, we can be able to get it out to gain our own foreign reserve.
Right. Thank you, Yunus. Minister.
Yeah. The first question Yunus asked was the problem of sharing of fertilizer on time. I would say partly bureaucracy, and this fertilizer that we have, that we're sharing right now, is donated to the Federal Ministry through the Central Bank of Nigeria. And of course, before the Federal Ministry of Agriculture distributes any fertilizer or any inputs, they have to test it. So elaborate testing had been done, sample testing had been done on the fertilizer. And those fertilizers are located in 7 different locations around the country, from Port Harcourt to Gombe to Funtua, Kaduna, Ajakuta, and so on and so forth. So a lot of testing was done, and that took some time before the results came in, because they're like, on NPK alone, there are 3 different fertilizers, types of fertilizer, and then you have SSP and urea. So testings were carried out, and then the bureaucratic channel of releases as well contributed to that. But I'm happy at the NEC meeting, the Vice President had notified all the governors that they're given 2 weeks from last week, Thursday, that if anybody does not evacuate their fertilizer, then it will be given to other states that need it the most. So we see from that last week, Thursday, to now, we have seen heightened activity in evacuation of that fertilizer. And of course, UNUSA also asked, why do we give it to states to share? It's just to aid in distributing fertilizer. I mean, even the states have their own modalities for sharing. And what we have given from what we have, we also have the private sector applying for allocation. And we've been doing that. We're also taking care of the large-scale farmers and also individuals that were who have at least, because what we have given out to states are those for smallholder farmers will be given out free of charge. The other ones will also be free, but transportation costs will be borne by the large-scale investors, which is 5 hectares and above. So we have an elaborate sharing formula, and we also have a stockpile that we would target the dry season intervention that we have coming up in, and that is, in a sense, to capture what he had just mentioned, the issue of preparing ahead of time. So we're going to have that by August. We will have all our inputs for the dry season that will start anywhere between September, October, and November. And then the issue of food reserve. I must say here is that the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu met 53,000 metric tons of assorted grains in the National Strategic Food Reserve. And it is in that the wisdom of taking 42,000 and to distribute, thereby we still have about 11,000 right now, and we have kept that just in the event because we don't have any harvest anytime soon. The major harvest that will come is the wet season harvest that will come sometime around September, October, and November. So we need to have some sort of strategic reserve just in case, God forbid, for any emergencies that may arise. So that is what we have right now in our strategic reserve.
And you are buying the strategic reserves from the communities as well. So we're all fighting the inflation together.
Yes, but what we are doing, we're targeting harvest time when prices are low.
Okay.
So that's
good.
All right,
yeah.
that's as far as the UNUSA's questions are concerned. But then before UNUSA, we had Abraham, who said arable land, that most of the arable land, and that perhaps again the Afghan president might help us clarify. Abraham says most of the arable land is being used for cash crops and not.
Well, you know, in the past, you see, we just had a few crops that we referred to as cash crops. Today, I think you have an avalanche of what is cash crop. So it is very difficult for, I mean, it's not very scientific for anybody who knows the business to make that statement. Because we just said, or Prof just said that tomato now is really a cash crop.
Even water leaf.
Even water leaf, egu and all that. So, but you know, when we were in school, it was a standard question. What are cash crops?
What are food crops?
What are food crops? So I think he may be right, because we are encouraging farmers to do farming as a business. So wherever they make more money, of course, they will go that way. No doubt about it. It's no longer subsistence.
So good. So it's just a thin, even the thin line in between has blurred, right now, because which is the cash and which is the food crops, and either can be.
Well, just let me just put chip in here, and that's why government is intervening in the major crops: rice, wheat, cassava, maize, sorghum, and soya. Those are the only crops now that we are intervening for dry and wet season. And of course, other crops like you mentioned, like tomato, we're looking at how we can expose the private sector to handle, like for instance, Mr. President has expressed the desire for the southern states to set up greenhouses, for instance, for the cultivation of tomato, because of course, the climate and the land issue.
Now, still staying with Abraham's questions, perhaps Prof would help us here. He says, what is the relationship between the dollar and the naira? The dollar is a currency, the naira is a currency. So what's this thing about dollar and naira? Prof, that's your turf.
Well, dollar, there are three price mechanisms. We have inflation, you have exchange rate, you have interest rate, you have what they call it, monetary policy rate, MPR rates. All of these are prices. And in any consideration of price, you have to look at demand and supply and then seek to find where the equilibrium is. Incidentally, whether you like it or not, dollar has become a store of value and the country is dollarized. What it means in effect is that people are storing this dollar, and then we are no longer worried about importers, because importers used to consume 4.6 billion every month importing goods, dollar. And then CBN struggle with about 2 billion every month to disburse. But now the bigger fear is those who are speculating on your currency and they're holding dollars here and they're trading with those dollars because they believe that the value will continue to go. So they're making money and complicate. Many things are sold in dollars. In fact, if you take money to any civil servant, they'll tell you go and bring dollars. So they don't want to touch your naira. So you can see how bad it is. Nobody wants to touch your naira.
Why the civil servants?
No, well, just an example, a convenient example.
I would have, well, the civil servants hardly have access to those kinds of funds.
Well, so the fact of the matter is that our naira will gain in value if only we can increase the supply of the dollar available. Also, unfortunately, 90% of our income in dollars are from NNPC-related operation. Oil, crude is 79%. Gas is 11%. Both of them account for 90%. So we now have only 10% to play with, which is diaspora remittance. You have FDI, which is declining, but also have portfolio investment that is increasing, but it could disappear any minute you cough, they go. So we have a precarious situation there. And the president has also brought in securitization as a method of raising the dollar. So he goes and grabs the 5-year revenue of the crude and securitizes it, goes to the gas and grabs the 5 years. So in other words, taking the money in advance and then making you work for it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then Afrexim gives you the money, then Afrexim will be on the door, knocking on the NNPC. We want to make sure you get it. So it's a way, a clever way of borrowing money without having to apply, put it on your balance sheet. Of course, you have investors coming from China, India, and all of that, and all pledging us, yes, bring the money, and then go and worry about what you do with your license or whatever you see. So it's a very clever way of asset-based financing rather than the debt-based financing. So that's the new way. That's the new way to go. But they will all come together in good time to strengthen the naira. But the worst is still not over. but it will. There are some green shoots and some light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, we only have a few more minutes on this program, and so we'll spend those few minutes winding down and making our concluding statements on how this administration has tackled the question of growing the economy and sustaining it, and of course, a key aspect of that is food security. So we'll take the closing comments, but let me begin from Engineer Kashim Ali as we wind down quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not satisfied with the Prof's response on this Naira and dollar. My question is, why is it only in Nigeria that we worship dollar? You can't go with dollar to make payment in Ghana here. Most of this country, you don't. Why are we doing that? And again, that even helps me to say this, and you use civil servants as an example. Civil servants, not civil servants, public servants. Now, if you give this $10 billion to the states, let me tell you, inflation will grow again because they will come and buy up the dollars, and then we'll be back to square one. So, but generally, I think I'm certain that the president has good intentions. He wants to grow the economy. He wants the country to go higher. But one sure way of us growing our economy is by producing. He must also support the manufacturing sector, because it's only when we can produce goods that we can send them out, and it will have sustainable inflow of foreign currency that we need to keep our economy running. Because the way we are doing now, we're housing money and then moving them around. It won't help the economy. Secondly, this issue of agriculture. Agriculture has moved from what it used to be. Like we're talking just now about there's a bloodline now between cash and food crop. Agriculturists, farmers now, there are many rich farmers today. The president of all farmers association is an architect. For him to move from architecture to farming, it's not because he's looking for poverty. So we should look at it from that part, that it's now a business. And if you want to support, you must come out to support in a manner that encompasses taking their interest into being. You must talk with them, not talk to them. So if we don't do that, then that is the only way we can make progress on this occasion. And public works must be given a pride of place. Public work is an enabler. When you want to do a short road, feeder road by direct labor, the multiplier effect is huge. People who sell more on the road.
Thank you so much, Engineer Kashim Ali. You've taken just about all the time left. But quickly, Afan President, in just a sentence or two.
I think the idea of getting everybody to work on the food system is very germane.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Prof.
Yeah, we should also open up to new methods of growing our economy. And I have been discussing with the minister.
Okay, fine.
We have bioeconomy, which gets all the organisms to work for us. If people don't want to work anymore, and you're talking about Yahoo, and we have confusion in the land, let us get organisms to work for us.
Well, Minister, you get to wrap it up for
Thank you very much, Cyril. Let me just say food security is availability, affordability, and accessibility to nutritious food. And we're trying as much as possible within our resources to make sure that Nigerians do have availability, affordability, and access to food. One of the ways that Mr. President has derived is to have a collaborative effort. Everybody, all hands on deck, to make sure that that food is available. The other aspect that I also want to stress here is the backward integration of a lot of our factories. For instance, like I have seen rice millers that are promoting outgrower schemes that are working wonderfully well and are feeding those mills to produce and those products that they manufacture. So outgrower scheme is also one aspect that we're looking at.
All right, thank you so very much, Minister. And this is where we conclude tonight's program. We'd like to thank you too for being part of it, and for all those who called in with questions and suggestions, we say thank you for being part of it. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.